Good morning everyone. This is Ms. Deerkalakshmi, Assistant Professor from the Department of English, Holy Cross College, Tiruchirappalli. The e-content which I have prepared is titled Types of Translation. This types of translation e-content will be helpful for the third year undergraduates of English department as they are having a course on the title Tamil Literary Writings in Translation. And the learning objectives, after you are having a go through of this e-content, you will be understanding the nuances of literature, nuances of translation, and you will be identifying the various types of translation, and the learner will be also able to appraise the uniqueness of different types of translation and their impact in the field of translation. And if we come to the introductory part of this PPT or the e-content, the translation is the main thing. It is a goal-oriented activity. Every translator, he or she will be modifying using his or own technique the originality of the writer who has written according to the needs of the readers of that particular text. And this modification leads to various other types of translations such as literal translation, conceptual translation, abridged and translations. Generally, a particular type of translation exists in contrast with the other type of translation. This chart will give you a clear picture of the various types of translation that are present in the field of translation. Literary, non-literary. These two are the major types of translation. Along with it, we have a word-for-word translation, literal translation, free translation, conceptual, elaborate and abridged translation. Translation and the major types. If you take up all these types of translation and if you want to confine it into three categories, these are the major three categories of translation. First one is literary translation. Literary translation is translation of literature called novels, short stories, poems and the prose pieces, and it should have the sense and the style of the original writer, and the text has to, the translated text has to have the same thought continued in it. And the second type is called the non-literary translation, which includes the translation of physical, scientific, social sciences, journalism, news items, law related things, personal discourses, written discourses, and it will be having sense for sense. It will give importance only to the meanings of it. And the third type of translation is literal translation. It also focuses on word for word translation. And the first type of translation that we are going to focus is literary translation. Literary translation is the translation of literary works such as novels, short stories, poems, etc. And it must reflect the imaginative and intellectual quality of the original author who has written that particular literary piece. Translation of literary work is considered by many of the translators as the highest form of translation. And this translation, this literary translation, it reflects the features of SL. SL is something called source language. One source language, from that source language the translator will be translating it to the target language. We have the terms called source language SL and target language. And the second type is non-literary translation. Non-literary translation is mainly translating the scientific and technological terminologies, especially advertisements and news items, spoken discourses or written discourses, etc. And non-literary translators should have adequate knowledge of the field. They should know physics, they should know astronomy or whatever field that they are going to translate it, they should know that background knowledge. And new terms could be coined. The translators are given the preference of coining new terms to the type translated text. Textual coherence is very important for non-literary translations. And the third type, which is very easy type, is called word for word translation. If we take up how a process of translation is made, one word after the other is translated to the target language, that is TL, and the substitute for each word in the source language is translated to the target language. The words are translated and substituted in the target language in order which they occur in the source language. The order has to be maintained, the meaning has to be maintained, especially the word, individual words has to be translated. Two basic principles are followed. No word should be left translated. No word which does not occur in original text should be included in the translated text. These two basic rules are used when a translator is translating it word for word. And the next type is literal translation. Literal translation is an ideal form of translation, and here also the translators are not given any privilege of adding anything new to the source text. And no two languages have similar constructive or the formation of language system. So, there will be a change in the translations that takes place. Sometimes few languages will be similar, and this literal translation is possible for both similar languages and different languages. The next thing is free translation. Free translation, as the word suggests, the translator could translate anything free on his own will, and the source language text will be having a liberty. We will be having a liberty, the translator will be having a liberty to translate word for word, or there is no relationship between the form of the original text and the translated text. And the emphasis is mainly on the sense. The word sense is given meaning here. The meaning of the text is has to be transferred. Only that is translated in free translation. Free translation is more suitable for literary text because emotional response of each writer or a book varies from one translation to another. Free translation also takes liberty with the length of the original text. It could be short, it could be elaborative, and it depends on the length, it depends on the mindset of the translator. Next is conceptual translation. Conceptual translation means the concept or the very message is translated to the target language. The emphasis is more on the communication of the message than giving importance for each and every word. We are not giving importance to the individual words, we are giving importance only to the concept in general. It is quite possible for the translator to translate each and every word, but we are not considering the importance of the message that is conveyed. The conceptual translation is generally shorter type of translation, and the best example of this translation is no smoking. Is a simple translation which so shorter in length, but it conveys the meaning that has to be prohibited in certain place. The next thing is elaborate translator. Conceptual is shorter translation and elaborate